Call BBC Surrey
0800 587 1046.
Now, tributes continue to pour in for the much-loved comedian and actor Terry Jones, who sadly died. He'd been suffering from a rare form of dementia in recent years. His Monty Python co-stars have been speaking out. Terry Jones directed and appeared in Life of Brian. Here, he talks about the protests against the film.
I think most of the protest came from people who hadn't actually seen the film. And subsequent to the protest we had, various churchmen then did eventually go and see the film, and we were eventually getting very complimentary remarks from the church. We were going to actually write a Life of Christ. We thought, well, it'd be quite interesting to write a funny Life of Christ. When we actually started working on it, which meant we went back to the Gospels and started reading them again, I think we all very quickly came to the opinion that Christ was a very good bloke saying a lot of very good things that we all agreed with. And the humour wasn't in Christ at all. The humour was in the way in which somebody can come down, say things which are true and real, and then for the next 2,000 years, people go ahead fighting and killing each other because they can't agree on what this good person has said. And that is really what the Life of Brian was doing, really. Brian himself wasn't Christ in the end. He was born in the next door manger. But the parallels are there. The parody is the parody on the church. So it's heresy rather than blasphemy.
Well, did you know that the Monty Python star was a Surrey lad, grew up in Claygate, was born in Wales, we should state that, and studied at Guildford Grammar School at the RGS, where he was head boy, no less. In 1983, he recorded his Desert Island Discs and spoke to the presenter, Roy Plomley, about his time living here.
To my great regret as a child, we moved when I was about 4.5 or 5 years old. We moved down to Claygate, which is near Esher in the home counties, sort of stockbroker belt. And I spent the next 15, 20 years of my life sort of resolutely saying, I'm not English, I'm Welsh, take me back to my home, please, everybody.
Have you got the language?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, this awful thing, you see, I'm just saddled with this terrible home counties accent, and here I am feeling Celtic and wanting to be Welsh, and saddled with this
You're
thing.
beginning to sound very Welsh. You went to Guildford Royal Grammar School. Was there a kind of Welsh colony there?
Not that I ever discovered. They may have been under one of the floorboards somewhere, but I never actually managed to unloose them.
Lovely stuff. Paul Carenza is an award-winning comedy writer and comedian, and also a former RGS boy himself. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, James.
Not there at the same time as Terry.
No, I was about, I suppose, 30 years after. But we did meet up at one of the reunions and had a very good chat about comedy. And, a very kind and brilliant and creative, just lovely man, really. So really, really missing him today, yeah.
What did he tell you?
Well, I was actually booked, it was very old school, and I was booked to do the comedy slot at their 500th, what do you call it, quincentenary or something, 500th anniversary. And on the day of the event, they said to me, oh, by the way, Terry Jones is coming. And I said, there's no way I can do comedy in front of Terry Jones. It's just not possible. And they said, well, we'll sit you next to him at the dinner. It'll be fine. And you can have, I thought, no, this is even worse. I can't speak to him before the show and everything. But he was just the kindest, loveliest, like, oh, no, don't worry about me. It's absolutely fine. You just go and do what you do. And he was really encouraging. And we talked about modern comedy and the things that he'd done and some little anecdotes of making the films along the way. And just really, really a lovely person. They say don't meet your heroes, but this was an exception. Meet him if you could. It was brilliant.
What a lovely thing to say. And how much of an influence were the Pythons on the sort of comedy that you do, Paul?
Well, I can tell you the clip you just played there when he said he couldn't find the Welsh colonies under the floorboards of the school. I did find my tribe at that school at the very same place, and I found the comedy gigs. And having no idea that Terry Jones was ever there, let alone head boy, I found, it took 6 months or so, but I found my fellow comedy nerds, and we were reciting Python sketches. We were putting them on. We were then writing our own based on those, and then we sent them off to the BBC. And basically, I wouldn't be a comedy writer and a comedian without what Terry Jones has done and what the Pythons have done. But not only that, of course, beyond just me, the state of the comedy that we have today would be completely different. And this was an age, of course, before the stand-up circuit as we know it, really. And although none of them were stand-ups as such, that whole anarchic nature to their humour, I think, really turned comedy culture on its head, really, and we're still living with the echoes of that today.
Interesting, though, we did have a text earlier on from somebody saying, I admire everything about Python, I just don't get it.
Yeah, and I think there are many who say that, and I've seen other comedians, in fact, been posting similar things this morning, saying I didn't get it at all. Fair play. If this was your hero, absolutely fine. But I really think that there's so much. Even if you didn't get it, maybe it was at times very extreme. The Mr. Creosote character that they were talking about a lot on in the last 24 hours or so that he did was probably Python at its most extreme and certainly violent. They were really pushing boundaries there. But then the ramifications of that, the tributes to that, the state the comedy circuit becomes after that is really influential. I think from that, I think we've all the echoes of that have passed down. So actually, the comedy you might like instead, I do think in many ways looks back to Python.
Good talking to you. Thanks ever so much. That's Paul Carenza there, a comedy writer from Guildford.
Let's bring in John Wood, who's a huge Monty Python fan. He's in East Grinstead. Morning to you, John.
Good morning, James.
So your reaction to this sad news?
Oh, it is really sad. He was such a lovely fellow and so influential, and I can't really believe he's gone. But I suppose he's been ill for a long time, so it took away the shock of it a little bit. But even so, it was very sad when I heard the news.
Now, apparently, you've got a Monty Python dating website.
Yeah, that's right. It's called Pythonesque Dating, and it's on it's a Facebook group, and that's how I found my wife. Because I set it up when I was single after I got divorced, and there you go. And I got married actually just last October on the Python's 50th anniversary at the Ravenswood in Sussex, and we performed a sketch, and I performed the bed sketch, and I was playing the Terry Jones character of the groom, because I was the groom.
So, well, I suppose that could be an indication. I was going to ask you, what sketch really does stand out for you?
That one is obviously very special now. It was special anyway, but now having actually performed it live, having actually got married for real, it was an amazing experience to do that. But there are so many others that I love that he performed. I mean, Spam sketch, obviously. Arthur Two Sheds Jackson is special. And when he was Prince Herbert in the Holy Grail, I mean, that was wonderful. Not the curtains, the sketch.
Yeah.
Perhaps
now,
not.
John, if somebody's interested in maybe rediscovering their work, is it all available, online? Is it easy to find?
Well, actually, it all used to be illegally on YouTube, but then Netflix bought all 45 original TV shows, and so now you have to be on Netflix to see them. So that's what I recommend you do if you're interested in seeing the real Python, which is the original 45 shows from 69 to 74.
Well, that's my evening sorted. Thank you. Cheers, John.
It's BBC Surrey. I'd love to hear from you this morning. If you've got a favourite sketch, really good to hear from both John and also Paul.
And Paul as well. And like he said, just that influence that it's had, whether or not you consider yourself a Monty Python fan, if you're working in modern comedy, whether you know it or not, the Pythons will have had an influence on your work.